Today's reading is from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. This week's reading, How High Should We Aspire? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The passage this week is from the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 5. I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. The easiest explanation for these words is that they were spoken in criticism of the scribes and Pharisees, particularly since Jesus often was verbally attacked by them and stood up to them fearlessly. However, it wouldn't have been much of a challenge to the disciples who aspired to spiritual perfection to tell them, don't be like those who lack any such aspiration. Jesus, in fact, only a few verses later, said, Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father, which is in heaven, is perfect. What Jesus was referring to here then was the self-righteousness of the priests. Don't seek perfection, he was saying to his disciples, in the image you project toward others. Don't be satisfied with a goodness born merely of ego definitions. The highest virtue is to transcend the very thought of personal virtue in the realization of God alone as the doer. Before this realization, even the thought that I am kind or I am truthful is self-limiting. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, the 7th chapter, yet hard the wise Mahatma is to find that man who saith, all is Vasudeva. Thus through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Welcome and blessings to everyone. I'd like to read to you from Paramahansa Yogananda's Book of Sacred Prayer Demands, Whispers from Eternity. Teach me, O Father, to find Thee in the cave of my heart, that I may walk with Thee everywhere. Teach me to hear Thee in silence, that I may hear Thy voice beneath outer noises. Teach me to find Thee in inner peace, that I may be with Thee calmly in the midst of outer tumult. Hubbub or silence, tumult or peace, I care not, so as long as Thou will teach me to find Thee anywhere at any time. It's a joy to be here with Ananda Seattle. It's always an expansive experience for all of us to reach out and be in different parts of Ananda at different times. Although we're always on the same wavelength, it's nice to see the ways that Ananda can express in very personal and individual ways. So it's always a joy to be visiting our other Ananda expressions. There's a wonderful story that Swami Kriyananda has recounted many times, both in his writings and his books, as well as in his lectures. And it's a story that he heard from Paramahansa Yogananda, a story that reflects a vision that Yogananda had in his boyhood youth when his name was Mukunda, his given name Mukunda. That this vision has taken place in a Himalayan village. And it's a hot day with the sun beating down and it's dusty and the squalor of the marketplace is surrounding him and the jostling of people, merchants and buyers, and just an intense experience, one that you could see in everyone's expressions, sort of a dragging down energy. And every once in a while before him, someone would stand and gaze upward behind him to something up there and with sparkle and wistful eyes be uplifted. And then in another moment, they would cast their eyes down, look to the ground and say, "It's much too high for me." And this reoccurred several times. And then Mukunda himself thought, "I should see what this is." And so he gazes up, turns around and gazes up in that direction and sees this beautiful verdant garden, lush, inviting, very cool, almost a paradise. And of course he's uplifted. And then he too starts to feel, but it's much too high. And then he stops himself and with a sternness of his will and says, "But I can take a step-by-step approach and I can reach there." And indeed, in the vision, he reaches that lush garden. Well, how high should we aspire? To our full potential. It's not something outside of ourselves. That garden represents allegorically, symbolically, reaching up to our highest potential within ourselves. Because our destiny is that we're not really completely who we are, even as human beings, until we reach that stage of becoming what's known in Sanskrit as a Jivan Mukta, liberated while free. There's this interesting scene from a movie maybe some of you remember and some of you have never seen. The movie is Back to the Future with Michael J. Fox. And in the movie, he goes back in time. And the time period where he arrives at is before he's born and when his parents haven't come together in a relationship and haven't married and haven't had him as their offspring. And this character that Michael J. Fox portrays, he realizes the setting isn't really conducive for his parents to get together, and which means he'll never get manifested. So because his father as a teen, so his parents are teenagers, again, before they've come together in their relationship. And his father is a nerdy, clumsy klutz. And his mother, as a teenager, is one of the attractive queens in the scene there. And so this character, played by Fox, realizes he's got to coach his father so that they'll get together, he and his mother. And so they're in a soda shop, and Michael Fox is coaching, as I said, his father-to-be. Let's phrase it that way. And he says, "You've got to woo her. You've got to be romantic, but don't have that forceful expectation. Let it be in God's time." So we're doing our part by really investing our energy, our awareness, our consciousness, and then it's God's. So there's that phrase, wonderful phrase from the Indian scriptures, Nishkam Karma, which we tend to say a whole lot, because it captures it in a very meaningful way, that it's the idea that we don't have the attachment to the fruits of our actions. But that doesn't mean we don't act. We need to act even more so. As we grow spiritually, our actions should be more energized, more engaged, but more detached. And I think all of us have experienced that's no easy task. You know, life itself will bounce us around. Our karma will come up, and, you know, we'll find things that will disturb that sense of balance in that. A little over a year ago, as you know, Swami Kriyananda left his body on April 21st of 2013, and many of you participated this past Monday here in the celebration of that moksha, that liberation of Swami Kriyananda's soul. But just a few days before, I was living at Ananda Village, and I had to go to Sacramento, actually, to receive my citizenship in this country. Although I've lived here a long time, I've been one of those Canadians, And but I went down, and the day before, I was staying overnight, I started to feel this very deep ache in my lower back, more than discomfort. And the ceremony itself was long. It was in the baseball field of the major baseball field in Sacramento outside, and there were 500 other people taking citizenship. And it went on and on for 4 hours. And increasingly, I was having a hard time breathing, just with the pain that was there. And then getting back to Nanda village, it just increased over the next few days. So that Friday, which was 2 days before Swami Kriyananda's passing, I went to our clinic and got help from Dr. Peter, our doctor. And he said, likely what it is, it's probably a pinched nerve. And which was unusual because since I've been about 18 years old, not only have I meditated every day, I've done yoga postures every day. I don't think I've missed a day of doing yoga postures. So being 39 now, that I thought it unusual that those postures hadn't helped me along the way. But indeed, that wasn't really what was happening. And so so Swami Kriyananda passed at a little after 8 a.m. in the morning, Assisi time, because he was residing there at Nanda Assisi. So it was about a little after 11 o'clock in the evening, Saturday evening. And we had heard before we went to bed that he was having problems breathing. And so Parvati, my wife, and I, did special prayers for him and then went to bed, holding him in our hearts and our awareness. And then, not that long afterwards, the phone rang. Well, I had a real hard time getting out of bed. It's interesting, the house that we lived in wasn't built as a house at Ananda Village. It was built as a little office space adjacent to this other house. And it was used for businesses for quite a while. And then it was converted into a house. Well, in our bedroom, there's this post right beside my bed, a square post that runs from the ceiling to the floor. Very awkwardly placed. At first I would bump into it all the time getting out of bed. And I couldn't figure out, what its purpose really was. I can tell you what that purpose was, to help me get out of bed in those evenings. So when the phone rang a little after 11 o'clock, I could barely get out of bed, so I had to hoist myself up. Well, I moved so slowly, the phone call had already stopped, and there was no message. And so I thought, well, I just better sit up before I get to bed. And then that was Jyotish Devi phoning, as I found out afterwards, saying that Swamiji had left his body. But just a few minutes later, Dr. Peter phoned and communicated that. But it was like the pain in my body was there, but I could feel something beyond that, the grace of this period of time. But the pain increased over the next few days. It was increasingly a problem. And then on the following Tuesday, I went to see one of our chiropractors, and it felt a little bit better. And the pain medication that had been prescribed at the clinic was weird. It just had a weird after effect. And so I was sort of caught between what do I do and with the pain and all that. And I thought, I don't know what I'll do. And then I had to drive to Auburn to deal with my Social Security change of becoming a Canadian. And after about 5 minutes of driving, I thought, it's sort of hurting. And then it started to really ache. By the time I got to Auburn, which is about a 35-minute drive from Ananda Village, I was screaming, literally screaming. And then I took some ibuprofen, and I was fine. But you could see what was happening was that there was no relief, and the pain was just getting really bad. And then 2 days later, I saw our chiropractor again, and she did some interesting adjustments different. And I started adding in some yoga postures that I hadn't in my routine. Again, I've been doing yoga asanas every day for a long time. And then by that weekend, it was gone. But during that time, why I'm telling this story is not to have your sympathy, but at a certain point when the pain wasn't going away, and I think a lot of us probably, as our bodies age, have probably felt similar things of this acute and then chronic pain, that I thought, what if it never goes away? I mean, maybe this is the test, the challenge of being in this body in this lifetime for the rest of this lifetime. And it came to me in meditation, this thought, what is it that this will be? And I thought, I cannot determine my karma. that's revealing itself and coming out, because it's that karma from the past that needs to be overcome. And so meditation was difficult, because I've been used to sitting on the floor cross-legged for decades, and I couldn't do that at this time, and so I had to sit in a chair. Now for some of you, you may think, well gosh, sitting in a chair is real easy. It's very difficult if you're not used to it, to sit for a long time, to meditate in a chair if you've been sitting on the floor cross-legged. But I propped myself up and did the best I can, put a heating pad around my rear end, and did as best as I could. And my version of doing Mahamudra, which is a technique we use with Kriya, was interesting. It was I can now have a lot more sympathy for people when I show them the adapted versions of that when they take Kriya. But in that meditation, I just felt, so be it. If this is my lot for the rest of my life to be in this pain, I will aspire to offer myself ever more fully in meditation and in activity. And I could feel that it didn't relieve the physical pain, but it relieved the tension that my awareness was wrapping around that physical condition. And it really was a boon. And fortunately, I guess, it went away shortly, a few days afterwards. But that step of just saying, I'm offering it, is really what aspiration becomes in practice. So it's not the expectation that that pain would go away. The affirmation and the aspiration is that whatever happens, I can live my life more fully in God. The Clarity Online magazine, which is a part of Ananda Sangha Worldwide, comes out 4 times a year, and they have a section on humor, which I've always tuned into so that I can say stories at Sunday service. But they have this humor section that has sometimes different stories, and sometimes they have these real-life headlines that happen in the news. And this one, I remember, said, lawyer claims client isn't that guilty. So what does that mean? Well, thinking about our karma, again, our own karma has produced that we're not that free of karma. And so the point isn't that we're free or not free of that karma, it's what we're doing in this moment. Where are we going with it? There's this other humorous ad that was a true ad. It had to do about a retail store, and it said, largest selection ever. And then the motto was, if we have it in stock, if it's available in stock, we have it. So East-West can use that. If it's available in stock, we have it. Well, what we have in stock, personally, individually, is the full omnipresence of the divine. That's really our stock. We are that. What's happened is that we've covered it up. Our choices in past lives and this lifetime, our directions that have come from our desires, our attachments, have led us to put more than even a veil over what stock we have, that divine presence within. And we've sometimes even lost sight of what that stock is. Every once in a while, when I used to work in retail, you'd do a real cleaning and a good inventory, and you'd find, oh my God, we had those things all this time? In some corner obliterated by boxes, you realize, but we could have sold those. Well, it's like that with us, that we've obliterated sometimes our soul qualities. We have had them in a dark corner. And at first we may have realized, yeah, it's background stuff. And then we've forgotten it. And the other thoughts and desires and attachments come in and just cover that up more and more. But it's always there. our stock in that presence of God is who we are. It's not something we even have to become. We just need to uncover it, unfold to that experience. And so one of the things that we talk about when people become Kriya bonds, which means that you've taken initiation into the sacred technique of Kriya, which is the highest technique of meditation that Paramahansa Yogananda brought to all of us. But we often emphasize that when you take that important connection through initiation, that it's a good time to emphasize that if you're going to have a self-definition, your self-definition that everything else will revolve around is that now you're a deeply dedicated Kriyaban, someone that's really offering themselves into that experience, so that we're not John Doe who works in an office and we do Kriya. We're not Sally Brown that's a graphic design person that does Kriya. But rather, we're a Kriyaban that then expresses the sacred presence of the divine in all those other aspects of our lives. So that we always have ourselves in the deepest connection, because that's where our aspiration leads us to, is to be in that experience completely. And so when we can turn that around, then we can be real in that experience. And this is where humility comes in, as we've heard from the reading from Affirmations for Self-Healing and the affirmation that we did. Affirmations lead us to finding, again, that true expression of who we really are. And with humility, again, there's that fine dance that, as Swami Kriyananda said at one point when he was with Yogananda working on humility, he woke up being proud that he was more humble. So there is that sensitivity there that we can't just be, on one hand, a doormat, and we can't be proud of our humility. But really, what humility is and how it works with aspiration, it's when we're clear about that we're always offering ourselves to the divine and offering ourselves as an instrument for the divine. So that we're not doing things so much for God, which again is a wonderful step forward than being totally selfish. But if we can even shift of offering our lives to God to offer our lives with God, then we start to feel more that presence as truly our reality. So have your aspirations be the highest, and let each step before you be full of that devotion and grace of God already. Let's take a moment to meditate.